All right, we are still in Los Angeles. It's still the 25th. This is going to be part 2 of my analysis of the Arabia 111 incident. So if you remember, we are now taxiing for takeoff. The captain is starting up the engines and they're cleared to take off. Runway 30 and lining up on 12, performing the before takeoff checklist and before takeoff procedure and before takeoff checklist. And they're taking off in the wrong direction on a 1,000-meter long runway instead of a 3,000-meter runway. So if you read the report analyzes that probably the first officer was a bit fixated on a right turn due to the previous 2 times she took off in that airport the days before. And the captain was preoccupied for a really long time, head down, starting the engine, and then performing the before takeoff procedure and the before takeoff checklist. It goes on the report to say that the company has identified the areas of vulnerability of taxi, lineup, and takeoff, and calls for pilots to fly head up during those phases. However, the report stops short of saying why this is the case. I mean, the guy had 22,000 hours. The guy is a qualified TRI training captain, line check airman. He knows everything. He knows the policy, he knows the procedures. I don't know if they have a philosophy, but he should know that. And still, he chooses to go head down and not taxi head up, not making sure they're lining up on the correct runway. And the report fails to cover that angle of the incident. The report rightfully says that bad workload management or poor workload management leads to a total collapse of situational awareness. I mean, you cannot use any other word. They just took off 180 degrees to the direction they were supposed to. Let's try and figure out why this is the case. Pilots are very picky. Pilots are pay great attention to detail. It's very easy to get sucked into details to where this knob should go and where this switch should go and when should it go, and we get sucked to details on various phases of flight. We do, however, have spots, procedures, areas which are more prone to disaster, to big mistakes. This may be the main point I'm trying to make in these videos. Not all mistakes are equal. The goal of aviation safety is not zero mistake. Zero mistakes, that's a bad goal. This goal leads to flat attention. Everything is important. And that's not the case. Not all mistakes are equal. I mean, taking off with a TCAS off or a navigation light off is not the same kind of mistake as taking off with bad takeoff, erroneous takeoff parameters, or taking off, like in our case, in the wrong direction. And this tendency to go into trying to achieve zero mistakes is a bad goal. And companies and pilots and mostly check airmen need to relay that. You have to fly the airplane first. Aviate, navigate, communicate. That's the first step the first rule in every aviation philosophy. And for some reason, or not for some reason, this is very, very tempting to pay attention to too many details and miss the big picture. And you have to remember this. A zero mistake goal is a bad goal. It's not only unachievable, but it hurts situational awareness. if you pay attention to details when you should be head up and paying attention to one single detail, and that's making sure you're on the yellow line, turning in the right direction, no airplanes on the runway you're lining on, and you are now busy in switch off and switch on and TCAS and checklist and setting lights on instead of monitoring the flight path, then you're missing the big picture. And missing the big picture leads to big mistakes. And this has to be the mindset. We cannot treat all errors, all pilot mistakes, all errors at the same level of attention. Small mistakes are manageable. This is what threat and error management is all about. You want to identify small mistakes and not let them evolve into big mistakes. Big mistakes, gross mistakes, have to be avoided. And that's the goal of aviation safety. It can be attributed to a lot of I don't know, causal factors. This is the culture in the company, this is the policy, they're saying one thing but meaning another thing. The written policy states A, fly head out, fly the airplane, aviate, communicate, aviate, navigate, communicate, but the actual, or what the management is saying verbally is a totally different thing. We will not tolerate any mistakes. It usually goes hand in hand with over-reliance on automation, because a company that does not accept minor deviation from the flight path leads to pilots not wanting to face accusations or having to explain themselves why they were like 100 feet below altitude. So they would just let the autopilot fly that. And these two things go hand in hand. Big mistakes, over monitoring small details, and under monitoring the big picture. And once again, you have to prioritize always. There are more important things than others. Not all mistakes, not all pilot errors, not all lapses bear the same meaning. Prioritizing, workload management, one step at a time, not doing too many things at the same time. This has to be the culture. On a cockpit level, on a management pilot level, on a company level, and even on a state level. Not all mistakes are equal. Pay attention to the big stuff more than you pay attention to the small stuff. If you're trying to manage everything, if everything is important, then nothing is more important than other stuff. And this leads to sometimes small mistakes, but sometimes big mistakes passing our defense line, passing through the Swiss cheese. So to sum up this point, please, flying is not a flat line. Not all tasks bear the same responsibility. You have to prioritize your attention based on the level of vulnerability. I mean, if you leave a switch off, then you left the switch off. If you took off with erroneous takeoff parameters of 100 tons, that's a whole new ballgame. That's a totally different mistake. Prioritize. It's all in your manual. Do that. Don't just do the normal procedures. Adhere also to the policy and philosophy and prioritize. Otherwise, poor workload management will lead to loss of situational awareness, and loss of situational awareness sometimes make us take off in the wrong direction, and you really don't want to do that. All right, I'll see you for the chapter 3.